On a special Tuesday edition of Marvel TV Weekly, I'll be joined in studio by the one and only Amy Rutberg, who plays Marci Stahl on Daredevil. Marvel TV Weekly starts now!
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, that's right. We're joined by a real man-eater. Welcome to Marvel TV Weekly. I am Christian Bladt, joined by Amy Rutberg.
Hi, Christian.
So great to have you here. Thank you.
I am so thrilled to be here.
And of course, as I mentioned in the little tease at the top, Marci Stahl is your character on Daredevil.
Marci Stahl.
All 3 seasons of Daredevil and The Defenders.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, so
I wonder if they'll do another season of The Defenders.
I hope so, but now Netflix has gone and canceled half of The Defenders.
Well, that's true. So I guess it would be kind of tough.
Yeah, but
maybe they could just drop in. Maybe it could be like the Daredevil Jessica Jones mashup, and we could just see like Mike Coulter in the back.
And we still have the Punisher, so
we have the Punisher.
But
that would be awesome.
Maybe Marci should, stay away. I think that
no good can come of
it.
Meeting John Barenthal in a dark alley. Well, I guess.
Anyway, there's just so much to talk about, and I figured that the best place to start would be the beginning. Talk about how you first got involved with Daredevil. My understanding is you had no idea what you were auditioning for.
I had no idea what I was auditioning for. It was just a really good scene. There was no character named Foggy Nelson. I don't remember what Marci was called, but she wasn't called Marci, which is funny because they could have just kept the name Marci because it's not like Marci's in the comics.
Yeah, she's not an established comic book. By the way, yet. She's not in the comic books yet, but I think that at some point there'll have to be the demand.
I ask Joe Quesada this like every time I see him, and I see him pretty often because we work out with the same trainer.
Yeah.
So every time I see him, I say, "When is Marci going to be in the Daredevil comics?" And he always laughs and says, "Soon." But
there is history on your side because there are characters created for television shows that do end up actually being in the comics.
Right.
In the Marvel universe, you have a character named Firestar who is part of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, but the really big one is Harley Quinn in the DC universe.
Really?
She was created for the Batman animated series.
Oh, Harley Quinn didn't come from the comics?
Right. And then they're just like, wait, this is a great character. Yeah. So
I didn't know that. Harley Quinn, Marci Stahl. They
have a lot in common.
Like 2 peas in a pod.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's the crossover right there.
There's the crossover. Okay, now I have a new thing to pitch Jeff.
So you didn't know what you were auditioning for.
I didn't know what I was auditioning for, and now I can't imagine Marci being named anything but Marci.
Yeah.
Like, she's so Marci. So I wonder what name they even had originally. I don't remember. But it was just this great scene, and I think I knew...
And this is not a scene that ended up being in the show? Or?
No, it was.
Okay.
At least a pretty close version to it was the first time we see Marci in season 1 with Foggy and Karen in the law offices, in the lobby of the law offices. I think it was originally written that they were actually in the offices as opposed to in the lobby. No, maybe not. No, because that's actually a big part of the scene that they're in the lobby. And so I just loved the scene so much. It was just so cool. And it was for like a, untitled Netflix something or another. And I went and I taped for it with the casting director, and we only did 1 take. Like usually, if there's no producers in the room and you're doing an audition with just the casting director, especially if if you have a relationship with a casting director, they let you, you kind of do it a couple times. You want to like kind of get it right. And I remember specifically we only did 1 take, and I totally thought because usually that means like the casting director's like, nah, you're not really, you're probably not right for it.
This was not what we needed.
It's not what we, but thank you. I mean, they're so nice. It was, it's just that happens. So I was shocked when weeks later I got the call that A, you're very close to booking this job, and B, it's Daredevil that's going to be on Netflix.
Now, how familiar were you with the character of Daredevil going into this? I mean,
not familiar. No,
because some people, they knew that there was the movie with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner.
So I watched it right after. It was of no help. Yeah.
First of all, there's no Marci in there.
No,
and then,
not so much.
Nothing in that movie really represents,
but
the way
Jennifer Garner did look amazing.
Right? Yeah.
She was, she's a gorgeous creature, but in that film, she's really quite the...
Yeah.
Quite
look, from a casting standpoint, she was great on Alias. You figure she'll be a great Elektra.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I was entertained, but totally. So that was my first intro to Daredevil was the Ben Affleck.
Well, and
movie.
just the interesting thing is like Daredevil is such a unique character.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of those ones where you feel like it could only come from a mind like Stan Lee, where you take this this bald superhero, blind. He's bald with the mask
He'd
on.
look great bald. He'd be fine. Charlie Cox can look. You can put anything on his head, he'll look good. Yeah.
So but he's blind, and I was just sort of wondering, when you explain the show to people that maybe aren't familiar with it,
Right.
at what point do you lose them? Is it when it's like, okay, so he's a blind superhero, but his senses are super strong in all the other ways, and he's a lawyer? Like, or they just like they find it hard to follow?
No, I actually think that the pitch of Daredevil to people who are not fans of superhero shows is a really easy pitch. It's like, so if I'm talking to someone who's not familiar with the sort of Marvel world, and they say, what show are you, blah, blah, blah. And I say, so I'm on a show, it's called Daredevil. It's on Netflix. They're like, oh, what's that? I say, well, it's a Marvel show. They're like, oh, like superheroes?
Yeah.
And I say, well, yes, but this is a very special superhero. He doesn't have powers like you think, like Spider-Man, like he doesn't scale walls.
Yeah.
He's blind. Well, no, actually, I don't lead with that. I say he's a lawyer by day, and he's, out for vigilante justice by night. Oh, and by the way, he's blind.
Right.
Like completely blind from an accident as a child. So all of his powers, so to speak, are just his heightened senses. And I kind of get people hooked. I think I'm the reason why the show is so successful. I think I single-handedly just explain it to every individual I meet, and I get...
Yeah, I think, like Netflix keeps their numbers pretty close to the vest, but I think that if you did it in a pie chart, it would mostly be because of
from
you
me.
selling
Don't
it.
you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Really, who else sells it that succinctly?
That's such a Marci thing to say. That was a total... It's from me. Yeah.
Sort of speaking about that, scene from season 1 where Marci is there with Karen and Foggy. Karen Page once memorably described her as a meat grinder and a pencil skirt.
That's great.
Is that a fair assessment of
Hold
Marci?
on. I think I'm wearing the pencil skirt today in honor of Deborah Ann
For those
Hall.
watching on YouTube, make sure that they can see on the Y.
Yeah. But I love that line, right?
Yeah, no, it's so great, and then you get to know her, and you're like, well, that's who she is, in the courtroom, on the surface.
Yeah.
That Marci, you'd find hard pressed to have a nickname like Foggy Bear buried somewhere in her. But once we really get to know her, but do you think
Marci
that's
has many layers? Yeah. I think that's an adequate description of Marci in the courtroom, and maybe Marci when she's on the job. And that's the thing that I love about Marci. She's is unabashed the right word? Like she's unabashed about the fact that she is determined, and she's a career gal, and she is relentless. I mean, I hate to say it, but if she were a man, I don't think anyone would say, "Oh, that's quite the
it would just be like, oh,
I love that
he's
about
so
Marci.
determined to being a lawyer. Yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
But Marci has quite the heart, and I think she loves Foggy desperately.
Yeah.
Like they met in law school, and obviously there's been up and downs to the relationship, but that man, like that, he means so much to her. And I think as we've seen, she would do anything for him.
Yeah.
So that says something about her. I mean, and also because Foggy's not exactly the type of guy that I think shows up on your doorstep with flowers. At least we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
But no, I really think there's, she's a very layered woman. And what's impressive is that through, we've seen different sides of Marci through all 3 seasons, and with 3 different showrunners too. And, Marci's a relatively small part of the show.
Yeah.
But yet every season they've written such great and interesting stuff for her. And the 3rd season's totally different from the 2nd season, which is different from the 1st.
Right. And, look, to be honest, when I first get to meet Marci, I'm like, oh, I don't like her. But that's a compliment to you. I think you did a good job, because I don't know how much we were supposed to like her. But as it comes along, especially like there's the moment in season 2 where she shows up to visit Foggy in the hospital, where she has the Foggy Bear. And I'm like, all right, I'm starting to warm up to her. And I think that it was good that, I like where they had her start from and sort of where we see her at the end of season 3.
She's got bite, Marci.
Yeah.
she has bite, but I don't know. I like that about her. Yeah.
Now,
she's sassy.
I believe I had read that you were actually only supposed to play her in 1 episode.
Yeah, I was booked for that 1 episode, and there was like vague talk of like, oh, maybe we'll bring her back, something like that. But by the way, every time you're on a television show, if you don't die, they always say, oh, maybe we'll bring you back. Like that's just the thing they say. So I was pleasantly surprised that that Marci came back, because I just I felt such a connection to her from the beginning, and I always thought that there was something more there than what you're seeing. Like I thought that first scene in the lobby with Foggy and Karen, something was telling me in my gut that she was putting on a bit of a show. Like, meaning that, yes, it was a little bit about the case, but that scene is about her seeing her ex-boyfriend for the first time in a long time.
Right.
And my guess is, and nobody has said this to me behind the scenes, this is just my guess is that he broke up with her.
Yeah.
It was not the other way around, which you wouldn't necessarily think that, but that's how I sort of had treated it. So this was the first time she's seeing the guy that broke up with her when he's coming to her office.
And he's with Karen.
And he's
so
with,
it's like, I
and he's
don't know
with
what this
cutie
deal is.
pie Karen.
You know, and look, Karen and Marci are similar types,
You think so?
Well, I mean, I think just physically. So if she sees, it's like also a blonde.
I take that as such a compliment. I think Deborah Ann Wall is the most beautiful woman ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's lovely. I mean, my wife is the most beautiful woman ever,
Right.
I will say.
Second most beautiful
But,
wife.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Second most beautiful woman.
But and I think that, she'd be like, oh, what's this? This is like,
Right.
who's this version
Who's this
of me?
pretty?
Yeah.
Who's this pretty blonde with straighter hair and
So
Yeah.
and so then it just sort of just comes up throughout the course of the first season and then the second season, like, we'll have you on a couple times, or at some point do they say, maybe it's for season 3, we're actually going to have you on more regularly, or was it always like we'll have you on a few episodes here and there?
Season 3, I knew what was gonna happen. I mean, not necessarily specific storyline. And by the way, there was stuff that we shot that was cut, Marci stuff. Which, I think season 3 is, I just think it's a piece of art. Like,
Yeah.
I just think you're not going to find a better season of television anywhere. And that's not just because I'm a, small part of it. But so when I saw the stuff that they cut, I was, at first I was sort of bummed because, you
Hey,
I
did
want to
good
see
stuff
more
there.
Marci.
Yeah, right, of course.
But I totally understood why they did in the context of the rest of the season. Like, it just didn't work. And or you didn't need it. Whatever. I don't even know what the reasons why they cut it, but whatever the reason was, like, it's a perfect season. Like, it's even with a little less Marci.
Yeah, it would have been like double perfect if there was more Marci. But we've talked a lot about that on this show since the other hosts and I have all finished it.
Right.
Is that we all had what we thought was our favorite Netflix season, and then it's hard to compare anything to this one because look, some of the other ones, the majority of them are 13 episodes. There might be a couple of moments in a few of the other seasons where you're like, all right, can we get back to the thing that I'm really interested in?
Sure, understandable.
And I thought that season 2 of Iron Fist did a great job because it was only 10, so they just stuck to it and then they
Wasn't
got
it
out.
great? I thought it was great too.
And I thought that, this was 13 episodes where you didn't, you weren't like checking the clock at all, where you're like,
not once.
Let's just get back to it,
No.
And I think that they used the 13 episodes well, to the extent that if you're like, well, if there were less, they would have just had to breeze through the story.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're able to take
so
your
much
time.
going on.
Like that episode that's mostly about Karen's backstory.
That's my favorite. Got that and that in episode. Is it episode 3 with the fight scene?
I believe it's the end of episode 4.
Okay, so that in episode 4 might.
I remember I've told the story on the show before. So the first weekend that the show dropped on Netflix, I downloaded 4 episodes to watch on a plane, and I only had 4 of them. And so I know that's episode 4, the long fight scene, is at the end of episode 4, because I was like, well, I can't watch anymore because I've gone through all my downloads.
I've gone through, right.
And so that's pretty amazing. And we've talked about that on the show before too, but it's just that 10 minutes long continuous cut, I mean, that's sort of, the sort of thing that people try to do all the time in movies and TV. And it's, obviously a lot harder to do than anybody imagines. But obviously we're talking about 2 things that have not nearly enough Marci in them. But if we get like down the list past Marci, these are the great things. And
that's sweet of you to say, but yeah, it's an amazing
so hard
season.
to imagine something that watching something that's so engaging as Matt trying to first of all, who breaks into a prison, just Matt Murdock pretending to be Foggy, and then like, now I got to fight my way out of here, and just all the different just like, I don't know, 8 times where he ought to have died during that,
Yeah.
So
and I can only find one point where they swap in the stunt double. People have told me that there are 2 times, and I've watched it many times, and I can't actually find the second time. Like, so that's how good it is.
Yeah.
That I've watched it, I don't know, 6, 7.
Right, and I believe
dozen.
I saw in an earlier interview that you said that you have watched the whole season 2 times,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I love to do that with movies, especially ones I'm
Yeah.
excited for, because the second time, like, okay, I can relax.
Right.
Because I know where
Yeah.
it's going and I
Yeah.
can really enjoy it.
That's how I
because
felt, yeah.
as great as that 10-minute fight scene is,
Yeah.
you know, I'm literally on the edge of my airplane seat,
Right.
you know, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my God. But so if I were able to have the time to go back and watch it, I would love to sort of see it where you can take it all in.
And there were 2 episodes I hadn't read when we were shooting it. I hadn't read 10 or 11. 10 or 11? Yeah. So I knew that there was the Karen episode.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get to it.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't. And the first scene when she's
Party
in the
Karen?
party and
Yeah.
she's got her, it was like heaven to me. I just think she's such a talented actress.
Yeah.
I love that episode. I mean, that's its own independent film.
Right. And that's the sort of thing where, you know, if this weren't a streaming show, even if it was like a weekly show even if it was on cable,
Yeah.
it's tough to be like, well, we're going to devote like almost an entire hour to not the title character's backstory and not his, you know, enemy, but it's, you know, this side character who we really like. But let's really find out. And so it's so great that the way that these shows work is that you can do that. And I think that those are the sort of things that really lend to it.
Yeah.
And the character of Agent Nadeem just sort of being so important throughout the entire season. I also co-host the Daredevil After Show here, and we had Jay Ali on the After Show, and he told me to say hello. By the way, he said you're the best. You are the best, and that we'll all love you. So,
Were you surprised that Jay was British?
A little bit, yeah.
I know, because he actually does. I think his accent's great. Like he does a really good job. I forget he's British, and then I see him.
Because
and I'm like,
sometimes
oh, that's right.
I actually talked to him about this. Sometimes American accents, like great British actors.
Yeah.
Hugh Laurie and Benedict Cumberbatch. They're great actors.
Yeah.
Their American accents are not great.
I see Hugh Laurie slipping all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, every episode of House, there is like an entire section where you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, it seems easy to do, but I guess
I don't think it is.
No, it seems really hard. And yeah, you would just forget. And I sort of asked him about like, well, you know, you're a New York guy. It's like, yeah, I tried to tweak it a little bit. And he had actually talked about how things he'd been cast for previous to that were American accent characters, but they just let him use his British accent. So he's like, he actually thought that his American accent wasn't good, and that's why they were having him just to, you know, speak British, as it were. But and again, like Marci, that's a character that doesn't exist in the comics,
right?
And it's so great, and just, you know, tuning into the first episode of season 3, I'm like, well, who's this guy? You know, and I knew that Bullseye was going to be in this season, you know, Dex's character, but I actually thought it was going to be him. I'm like, well, how is this guy going to become Bullseye?
Really? You thought that was it?
Well,
that he was going to be Bullseye? Oh, that would be an interesting take.
Yeah. So I had,
wow.
because I do the show, I do a lot of shows here. I try to not really know too much about what I'm about to watch. You know, it's a fine line to walk sometimes. But so I was like, okay, so this is a new actor. I don't know him, and I know Bullseye is going to be on. And then when you realize it's this other guy, this really, really crazy guy, you know, and it's just, you get to go on this, you know, completely different journey with him, really. And, you know, just this moral center at the course of the middle of the show, when Matt, who is usually the moral center, has so many problems sort of dealing with it on his own. And it's the sort of great thing that you're able to get with a show like this, and how it's very difficult to stop watching one of these streaming series.
Yeah.
You know, because I was doing that after show, I would only watch like 4 at a time. And when I interviewed Jay, I hadn't watched episode 13. And he's like, you stopped watching? I was like, I had to, because it's too hard to talk about them.
It's too hard to talk about.
And it's so great, though, that his character's still so important in the way everything winds up, you know, at the end of the series. Now, this is a great series, and I think what a lot of people are doing is they're saying that, you know, season 3 and season 1 are great, but I think people just kind of brush past season 2, which I also really enjoyed, because I thought that adding the Punisher into the mix with Daredevil was so great. And, you know, sort of talking about great scenes that stand out, I've talked about a number of times that there's a scene with Charlie Cox and John Bernthal. They're sitting in a cemetery in season 2, and they're just talking to each other. There's no fighting. There's no bullets. It's just conversation. And I'm like,
it's fairly early in the season.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's episode 4 in season 2. And I'm just like, well, that is great acting, great drama. That's not, oh, that's good for a superhero show.
Yeah.
And I felt that way a number of times in season 3 as well.
A lot of those moments.
And especially when you have someone like Vincent D'Onofrio on screen, you know,
Yeah, Vincent.
like the episode where he goes to try and get the painting back from the Holocaust survivor, and he ultimately doesn't take it. You know? I just was like, that's the sort of thing that, you know, if this was a network show, you'd be like, yeah, this is interesting, but, you know, we got to get some more commercials in here. You feel like you wouldn't necessarily get something like that. So it's great that we get so many different, there's so many ways for all these great actors to kind of showcase the characters that they're playing. And one of the things was that Jay Ali said that his first day on set, he was very nervous, and that his first scene was with Vincent, and it was in this little interrogation room that their scene's in. And he said that Vincent was great, and he sort of helped him really calm down and just approach it, and he was very helpful. Did you interact with Vincent D'Onofrio much? I know you, unless I'm mistaken, I don't remember you having any scenes with him, but, you know, are you maybe waiting on set at the same time? Did you get to interact with him much, or not really?
There's kind of a funny story about that I've told a couple times, but I don't think I've ever told it live. But so no, the answer to that question is I've never worked with Vincent. Yeah, none of our scenes are together, and I've met pretty much everyone except for Vincent. But after I think season 1 came out, you know, because I didn't know how great the show was going to be. I didn't know, the first season I wasn't reading full script, so I didn't even know who Fisk was, and I was talking about him. And I had to say to Eldon, like, so what's the deal? And he's like, oh yeah, that's the bad guy, that's Vincent's not, you know, and I was like, oh, okay, great. But after I saw the season, like, that was, the first season, that was my big takeaway, was Vincent D'Onofrio, was for me. I just think he's the coolest villain. So, and I'd never met him, he wasn't at the premiere, and the Halloween after the season came out, I was trick-or-treating in my neighborhood with my 2-year-old at the time, and she was dressed as Goofy, and I was dressed as Donald Duck, like furry Donald Duck, like I was like in like a furry costume, with like no makeup, no, you know. And we knock on a door, and Vincent D'Onofrio opens the door, and I just fangirl out. I'm just so excited. I'm just like, oh my God, like, you're the most amazing villain. I mean, Rutberg, I'm Marci. I just kept saying Marci, and he was like, yeah, like just being very, very polite and sweet.
Marci.
I still have no idea to this day if he actually watched season 1 and had any idea what I was talking about, but to his credit, he was so sweet. And he was having a Halloween party for his sons, and he was like, "Do you guys want to come into the Halloween party, like crazy girl, and like in front of my door?" And I didn't go in. I had enough sense to be like, "No, it's okay. We'll keep going."
He doesn't mean that.
Yeah, no one wants it. No one wants a 2-year-old at their teenager's Halloween party. But and so since then, I've had I've had social interactions with Vincent.
Well, the interesting thing was, I can't remember if I saw this on your Instagram or Twitter, but I guess you ran into him voting.
Yes.
Which is funny for people who are fans of the show, are probably reading present day Marvel Comics.
Yes.
And in Marvel Comics right now, Wilson Fisk is the mayor of New York City. So I like to think that he was there sort of doing a write-in vote for himself.
Well, no, we were writing in Foggy Nelson. That's what we were doing. It was so, because as I said, we're neighbors. So Vincent was with his wife, and I totally ran it, once again, with no makeup. I ran into Vincent at the polls, and we voted together, and you know, talked about the neighborhood, and he's surprisingly a bit like he's very different from, not surprisingly, but he's very different from Wilson Fisk. I mean, his whole demeanor. Yeah, he's totally. So that was a really fun coincidence to see him, you know, just like a week and a half after Daredevil came out in the neighborhood, you know, voting.
Yeah, no, and I think what the video was, it was like he filmed something with himself talking about how he ran into you. That's what I saw.
Oh, you know what it was? Oh, because when I posted the photo, it was like encouraging people to vote, right? Like, hey, if Wilson and Marci come together.
That's right.
And I was giving photo credit to his wife. I did like the icon for a camera, and I said, you know, meaning like photographer, Vincent's amazing wife. But at first, fans misinterpreted it that we were married.
Oh.
So I don't think that that's the reason why Vincent did that video, to like clear it up.
Right.
But I was a little embarrassed that, you know, Now Vincent, first I fangirled on his doorstep, and now he has
First
to...
she shows up as Donald Duck, and now she's pretending to be my wife.
Now pretending to be his wife because he might think I'm a crazy fan. Yeah, that was a little embarrassing.
One of the things that I think is so great that they were smart, and as you mentioned, it's different showrunners each season, but the fact that he's barely in season 2, I think that if he had been this huge force in season 2, by the time season 3 comes around, I was like, oh yeah, this is the show where he fights the Kingpin every season. Yeah. So you just wanted him back, and it was so great. Yeah. And the fact that he just looms over scenes that he's not in, because everybody's talking about him, or he's Matt's conscience, or the devil on his shoulder. I guess that's a pun intended that I didn't, happily unintended.
Works.
And then, the way he's sort of listening and reading Dex's file, and he's inserted in the flashback. It was such a great usage of him as this imposing figure that everything that happened in the season in some way tied right back into him, and I thought it was great. Let's talk a little bit about Foggy this season, and the fact that Marci's the one who convinces him to run for district attorney. Yeah. And in true Marci fashion, it's like, well, of course you're not going to win.
Well, it's just realistic. Yeah, let's not get our hopes up.
Yeah. I mean, it seems as the season wound down that maybe there was a chance he could have won.
Totally.
But,
yeah, that would have been a really interesting.
Yeah.
I want Marci to run for DA.
Well, see, there you go. Now she's well positioned.
Yeah, this is nobody's idea but mine, by the way. But
you can put it out there.
I can put it out there. Yeah,
you can. There could be a fan movement of people that's like Marci for DA.
I think we can get a solid 3 people to maybe get on board with that.
All right, we'll see. I'll take a look at the live chat a little later. We've got at least 3 people on there, so they should all let us know whether or not they think Marci
should run for DA. Mom, this is your turn to tweet. Make sure.
So we were talking about voting before, and I know that there's sort of a political connection that you. Now, I guess the way to talk about this is that you are sort of a recurring performer on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and there's a clip that people can find without too much trouble where let's say you're playing a character who's loosely based on Stormy Daniels. We're not saying you are Stormy Daniels.
Let's say loosely based on Stormy
Daniels. Because I saw an interview where you kind of were like, well, let's not say that's who she is. So, but I think that's sort of that's kind of interesting. But you mentioned that you also played Dana Loesch of the NRA, which is not necessarily like SNL. I don't even think has someone play her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a pretty risky move.
Yeah, that's a fairly.
It was a risky move.
It's fairly specific. Work up an impression of this person. Yeah. But the interesting thing there, of course, is the fact that your background is actually in comedy. And now, did you? I think I saw you say that you were involved with the Upright Citizens Brigade.
I do. I've been involved with a show at Upright Citizens Brigade in New York for over 10 years called Gravid Water.
Okay.
And it's just this cult show in New York, and now it's in LA, and it's a monthly show. Sorry, this is just something I just remember.
Sure. My wife works with a woman named Tammy, who I can't think of her last name.
Tammy Sager?
Yeah. So
Tammy Sager's a genius.
Yeah, so that's her show, which is funny because I think my wife went to see it because my wife works for Orange is the New Black.
Right.
So
she does?
Yeah, so
cool.
she goes to New York for work.
What does she do on Orange?
She's a writer.
No way.
Yeah, so she just shot an episode.
Oh, that's really impressive.
Yeah, so it's funny because I feel like she went to one of those shows not that long ago when she was there. Yeah. So
Kate Mulgrew's a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah. That's she was there's a big cast on that show.
We're name dropping.
Yes, exactly.
AfterBuzz Marvel.
Yeah, for nerds.
We'll get back to Daredevil in a second.
We'll keep it on the nerd plane. As a fellow nerd, I can throw that word around. Yeah. That's Captain Janeway from Star Trek Voyager. Okay.
Captain Janeway.
It's a friend, and Let's do the abrupt segue here. You're also friends with another Star Trek captain, Scott Bakula.
Oh, I am. I'm like the Wilson Fisk to Scott Bakula. I'm the devil on his shoulder. Yes.
Which I think is kind of interesting because you and I were talking before we started here, and the idea that you were only scheduled to play Marci maybe for one episode, and then you're on NCIS NCIS New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah.
And your character gets killed off, but then we got to really figure out a way to get you back, and it's really kind of an interesting device. It's a lot like Wilson Fisk, you're saying. So kind of explain what happened and then how it is that you're back. You're back this season.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened, but I'm so grateful. Yeah, I died in season 4, about halfway through season 4. I just went to do one episode. of NCIS New Orleans, playing a CIA agent. And I had a great time, and I had a lot of fun with Scott Bakula. We had this really great sort of long scene together, and then I thought that was it. I thought,
Right.
I'll never be back to New Orleans. I like die. Like, I can't remember if I get shot or stabbed because I've died so many times on network television.
I saw a clip from this season, and he remembers that he saw you die.
Right.
And
So
then
did I
there's
get
like
stabbed
a stabbed in the stomach.
I think it's stabbed. Yeah.
Because the present day version of your character just starts like gushing blood.
Right. No, I was shot on the blacklist and blown up on Elementary.
Well, see, there you go.
Goes on.
Now that should be your real. And here's the ways I've died.
I totally could.
But
Right. Yeah.
Just complete sidetrack. I meant to mention this earlier. I liked seeing Marci and Foggy getting closer this year. At the moment where he says, "I love you," and he proposes, I was like, oh no, she's going to get killed. Because usually on a show, when somebody it's like, let's take this to the next level. On a show like that, you're like, oh man, I was just getting to know her.
That was one of the first questions I asked Eric Olson when he called me at the beginning of the season. That was like the first thing I said is, are you planning on killing Marci? And he's like, no. At the moment.
It's like, although now that you mention it, this is a good idea.
Yeah. But so I knew, and we knew that. Well, I don't want to. Okay, yeah. In case somebody's watching that hasn't seen the whole season, but
I mean, if you haven't seen the whole season, we've probably given away a few things.
And you're probably not watching this show.
Also true.
It's probably okay. Yeah. So no, I think we knew that Jay was going to die, but no. I was told that Marci wouldn't die at the beginning of the season, but that could change.
Yeah. No, but
I mean, it could have changed.
I talked about on this show and the Daredevil After Show. Just I was convinced that's the moment where I'm like, oh, it was too bad. It was too bad that we really got to know Marci. So I was relieved at the end of the season. I'm like, look, she's still alive.
Hey, you and me both, man.
So
definitely relieved.
So now that doesn't go into your death reel that we're talking about.
No.
So you said the blacklist.
Where's the wood? Oh God. Knock on wood. Okay, close enough.
Right under here.
Yeah.
So so you have experience with getting killed on television.
So with NCIS New Orleans, so I went, I did that episode, had a great time, and then they shot Scott Bakula at the end of season 4. That was the storyline. Dwayne Pride gets shot. Mm-hmm. And then I got a call after the season ended that they were thinking about doing this like crazy storyline where when he comes back for season 5, because obviously they're not going to kill Scott Bakula. He's the star of NCIS New Orleans. I get all these like angry tweets that think that I'm like trying to kill Scott Bakula, and I'm like, I'm not like, he's not going to die, people. Yeah, it's like Scott Bakula's not going to die. So I got a call that they were thinking of doing this, like this whole concept of having essentially exploring his past and his relationship to death and all of the, because he's kind of a reckless guy, Dwayne Pride, by having this character come back. So I think it was just, I guess it was partly that they liked me. Yeah. It was partly great timing. Like as far as like when my character died, that like they were like, let's do this. Let's have an angel. I know who just died. We had that blonde from episode 13 and everyone seemed to get along really well with Scott. So let's do that. So that, that was definitely one of the more surprising phone calls. Usually you get the phone calls that say you're not coming back or you didn't get the part. Right. So to get a call that, that they want you to come back and to play your dead character. I thought it was a new character when they pinned me for the episode. Right. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Because
she had an identical twin or something.
But like on NCIS has been running so long, people do come back in other like they maybe in season 1 they played some character and then in season 7 they come back. So I was like, oh, but that seems awfully close to come back as something else. And then found out it was like the dead. I didn't really know till I got the script like exactly what was going on. I thought maybe she didn't really die, but it was. It's been a fun ride, that show. Yeah,
and you mentioned one of the questions I had, because a lot of times, look, a show like NCIS New Orleans doesn't necessarily film in New Orleans. So you did actually go to New Orleans to film, though, so that must have been fun.
So I have been spending a nice amount of time in New Orleans. And I think that's the other thing that really kind of works for this particular storyline is that there's that whole sort of mystical voodoo element of New Orleans. So it kind of makes sense that he would have these visions. And I really like how they've kind of tied it into the season. So far.
And Scott Bakula, obviously, that's got to be great working with him.
He's the nicest man in television.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And he's in the most amazing shape. He is. I mean, he is like strong and has so much energy, and he's just a really impressive human.
Well, because when I was about middle school age, he had his show Quantum Leap, and like every week he was doing something different. And you just sort of get to realize like, wow, this guy can do pretty much anything. And and I mean, it's so it's always great to hear, because sometimes sometimes you hear the story of, not necessarily on the air, but people are like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't fun. So I'm so glad
I don't think
to
you'll
hear that.
ever see. You will never find anyone say that about Scott Bakula. He's just so hardworking, and he loves to act. That's the thing. Like sometimes you go on these network shows where they work so many hours and they do so many episodes, and you can tell the cast is like over it. Yeah. Like they're just like, it's a job, they're clocking in.
Yeah, exactly.
Scott is not that guy. Like, he cares about the story because of the elements. He's the kind of guy that, like, before the scene starts, he's like, there's something hanging. Hold on, I got it. Yeah, hand me a ladder. Like, he gets and he fixes it himself. I mean, he's like dad. He's just he's a great guy.
Well, that's great. So we have a few questions in the chat, and I want to make sure to get to them before we run out of time. So Aunt Barrow asks, how does it feel being in a superhero TV show? Now, you're not actually a superhero, but does it feel any different, or because of the fact that you're a lawyer, it's probably like your scenes could, I guess, exist outside of a superhero universe?
Sure. It feels great anytime anyone wants to put you on television. But this is a particularly special show, and I really do feel honored to be part of this history of Marvel and this whole world, and especially reflecting on Stan Lee and his legacy in the last week. It's a pretty special experience. And yes, Marci could exist outside of this show.
Yes, someone in here was asking, I have to find it to give credit, but so Ink and TV agrees with the idea. Marci for DA 2019.
Oh, yeah.
So you officially have Ink and
I have
TV's
one
vote.
fan. I have one person voting for Marci for DA.
DK Monkey 007.
Oh, yeah, what does he say?
What are the odds of us seeing a Marci spinoff? I mean,
that would be my dream. You guys tweet that. No, I think the odds are very low.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they're super low. We could hope for like that she appears in Jessica Jones.
Yes, I think because look, that they and
I do work for Carrie-Anne Moss, so I guess that's possible. But that's probably the best case scenario. The best case scenario for Marci is probably more Daredevil and Jessica Jones.
And if you show up in a scene,
Punisher.
if you show up in a scene with Carrie-Anne Moss, it'll probably be like when Foggy was in a scene with her and Jessica Jones. You just get yelled at, and
I do get yelled at. I'm actually in that scene. They just walk by me when he's getting yelled at.
You're actually sitting
I did get to during the Defenders. I did get to work with Carrie-Anne Moss, who's also really neat lady, like really sweet and kind and
that's
lovely.
sort of the impressive thing, especially like you're talking about the Defenders. I mean, Sigourney Weaver was on that. You have like all these people that it's not that long ago where people would be like, are you crazy even asking me to be on a superhero show? Like imagine asking the ask to Sigourney Weaver's agent. But now it's just like, well, no, these shows are so good, they're so well received,
they're so good.
So let's see. So our friend Amy, not you, but Amy Cassandra Martinez is one of our co-hosts here on the show, and she specifically didn't come in because she didn't want to get you sick. She has like a little flu or something.
Oh, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that.
But she wants to know how is it working with Foggy Bear? Obviously Eldon, but I will only refer to the character usually as Foggy Bear on the show just because I love that nickname.
I know, I love that. Eldon and I have a very relaxed chemistry. Eldon has been an actor since he was a small child.
Oh, wow.
So I think that I'm probably more excited to come to work every day than he is, only because he's been doing it, for as long as he has.
Like he can't remember not going to work on a set, basically.
Yeah, like he can't remember not, and I'm still, as I said, so thrilled anyone puts me on TV. But we have a very nice, relaxed chemistry. And I enjoy. He's also one of those actors that I think he's just so naturally good. It's like I sometimes feel like I'm working at it. And with Eldon, you never get that feeling with him. It's like he knows the camera and he knows it so well. And I'm always blown away whenever I watch Daredevil and I see him, because he just is Foggy. I mean, he's not in person. I wouldn't say he's similar to Foggy.
But when he's on screen. Well, it's a tough job, too, when it's essentially drama/action show, when you are the voice of any kind of comedic relief. Because if you don't hit that joke right, you're just like, well, where did that come from?
Right.
But every time that Foggy's funny, you're like, oh, that's good, because it really breaks up. We're talking about how tense and stressful watching season 3
Yeah.
was, it's good to occasionally have a moment, where Foggy has something. But it's not like he's the only one who makes jokes. But for the most part,
Sure.
he tends to be. So I can't imagine sort of having to, basically wear that many hats. It's like, oh, I have to do this really intense scene, where I'm talking about, my feelings with Matt, but then I also have to be funny. And so, yeah, I mean, he definitely does a great job. Samantha wants to know, do you think Elektra is really dead?
Well, if I were Eric Olson, I would say, hell no, let's bring back Elektra.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hope not. Wouldn't it be cool to see more Elektra?
Yeah, I think that it's, there were a lot of people were wondering if we were going to see her in season 3. And I think it's great that they knew, as we were saying, to just stay focused on Wilson Fisk. Don't try and throw in too many extra things. I think that it would have actually detracted from the overall story.
It's unnecessary. But I have definitely not heard anyone say that Elektra is alive.
Yes. No.
I have not.
Absolutely.
I have not heard. I have not even heard a spackling of that.
Yeah,
rumor.
and before we go, we'll talk a little bit about the hopes for season 4. But I wanted to get in this question from Analoda Pauly. Do you think Marci knows Matt is Daredevil? She's so smart. I always imagined she has known for a long time, but kept it to herself.
That's a great question. And someone also just tweeted at me before the show saying that what would happen if there was a Matt Marci scene. And, although we've never seen it in a flashback, if Marci and Foggy met in law school, that means that she also knew Matt in law school.
Right.
So she's known Matt a long time.
Probably just as long as she's known Foggy, yeah.
And if you think about it from a girlfriend's point of view, the relationship between Matt and Marci, if she doesn't know he's Daredevil, it's kind of a pain in the ass. It appears that Matt does not treat Foggy very well. I mean, if you don't know anything else and you're just looking like, hey, he was dead, but then he came back, but then he didn't tell you, and he did this and he did that. So the fact that Marci has so much patience with the whole Matt situation either means maybe she has an inkling, or maybe she just loves Foggy so much that it's like a man having, a sort of dysfunctional relationship with a family member, like a brother or like a mother or something. It's like just something that you deal with and you are at peace with because you love the person so much. Yes. But I think if they got together, I think she might have some words.
Yeah.
She might have some words for
Well,
that.
it's sort of like, because it is such a close relationship. Obviously it's not a romantic relationship between Foggy and Matt, but they clearly love each other, and she loves Foggy as well. And it's like, you don't treat him well, It's like, it's almost like you could see her saying to Foggy, he's like, Matt might not be that into you,
Well, and clearly there's been evidence to suggest that Marci wants Foggy to be that sort of successful corporate lawyer. But I think, definitely the way that sort of season 3 ended, it looks like, the band's getting back together, the Avocados at Law. And I think, I have no idea, what will happen in the future. God willing, there is a season 4. But I think that my personal opinion is that Marci will love Foggy no matter what he is. If he's a DA, if he's a corporate lawyer, if he goes back for working with Matt. But I think I would be like, if it were me, I would say, okay, he's got to treat you better. This has to be things have to change.
Right, and I think that if you know Matt that well, the idea that if Marci were ever in a room with Daredevil, she might be like, oh my God, this guy sounds like, because there's this great moment that they don't address in season 2, where Frank Castle's on the stand and he hears Matt Murdock talking in court, and you just sort of see this look on his face, and he's like, oh, that's Daredevil.
Right.
And they don't actually address it.
They don't address
I thought
it,
that
you
we
just
would have
hear
seen
it.
it. You can just tell that he notices. So.
Well, we definitely know that Foggy has not told Marci, because there is that moment in season 3 where he starts to, and then she's like, what? And he's like, never mind.
Yeah.
But that's a great question. Marci's a pretty smart cookie. I don't think it would take much for her to put 2 and 2 together.
And again, from our friend Amy Cassandra, who we hope is feeling better, who's the most intimidating person to work with? That can be in terms of the show. And, intimidating, I don't think necessarily has to have a negative connotation. So I'm not trying to ask you like a gotcha question. Is it, like J.L.E. talking about sitting down with Vincent D'Onofrio, he admitted that was an intimidating. It's just because Vincent D'Onofrio just physically took up almost the whole interrogation room, just like looming over him. So Did you find that, or was it just like, before the cameras roll, everybody was so laid back, you weren't really intimidated?
Well, I'm used to Eldon.
Yeah.
Like, I know Eldon's vibe. Like, I'm used to, like, Eldon and I, as I said, like we just kind of get each other's groove. And I always felt super comfortable with him. Like, we don't rehearse the scenes other than just, we like run the lines once or twice. But I've always felt very comfortable, like, touching him, and like there's never any like awkwardness. Like, he's just, as soon as the cameras roll, like, we're Marci and Foggy. Like, it's
Right.
it's very relaxed. I wouldn't say intimidated, but I'm impressed. I'm always impressed when I see Deb at a read through or at something, because like she has her line. She already like knows her lines. Like,
Oh, wow.
Like she's pretty amazing. Like, she would come to a script to read through, and she would pretty much already be off book. And I was always like, oh wow, like, if I ever do a scene with her, I better be on my stuff. Yeah.
Well, and before we run out of time, we have sort of touched on it a couple of times. Obviously, people who are fans of the show, people who are fans of the Netflix Marvel Universe, hope that there is a season 4. And, at the end of any season of one of these shows, you hope that there's another one. But because we now have Iron Fist and Luke Cage both getting canceled,
right,
it's a little bit more, you're a little bit more on eggshells. Because, look, from a business standpoint, you can understand Netflix is probably like, yeah, we've got like 100 hours of superhero stuff. People will go ahead and find that later. But what you hope is that they like the show. And I know that he mentioned this publicly, but...
Eric Olson, you're talking about?
yes,
yeah, our showrunner. Yeah.
The showrunner mentioned that he has pitched a season to them. So now it's up to them if they're impressed by it. And a website that I'm in no way associated with, but I completely support their movement, is renewdaredevil.com. And they're also on Twitter at renewdaredevil. And if you follow them, I guess that they do like little updates, I think, on Fridays. So they sort of let you know, like how many people maybe are on board.
And I don't know anything officially. I don't really know anything more than anybody else knows. But I would say I am cautiously optimistic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's, I think that, the response to the season is really strong. I mean, people are so happy with it that, we can only hope that,
right?
that there's
we
more.
can only hope.
Yeah, because, we have to see Marci as district attorney. I mean, that's what it really comes to. If you learned anything in these last 45 minutes,
listen, if you make me district attorney, I'm willing to die. But see in episode 13.
You would have to, as district attorney.
I think I would have to.
That would be Fisk breaking
if you
his
put me up
word
against Blake Tower, yeah.
Well, anyway, Amy, thank you so much for
thank you. My
being
pleasure.
here.
I love talking Daredevil, and thanks so much for having me.
And for people that would like to follow you on Twitter and Instagram, it's just at Amy Rutberg.
Yeah, at Amy Rutberg. I post a lot of behind-the-scenes photos of everything I'm working on. Still more behind-the-scenes Daredevil photos yet to come that I've been saving.
Oh, yeah, I see
the amazing willpower that I have. I have at least 2 or 3 more good ones.
It's interesting because both you and Jay Ali do post a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, little videos, little pictures. So make sure to follow her. Mm-hmm. And, of course, if you like, you can follow me at ChristianDMZ on Twitter and Instagram. And we will be back in our regular time slot this Sunday at 10 p.m. We'll get caught up on The Gifted and all the other news. And our Under the Weather friend, Amy Cassandra Martinez, will be back Thursday at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern for Marvel Movie News over on the Popcorn Talk Network. But until then, thanks again to everyone who joined us. And we will see you on Sunday. But until then, as the great Stan Lee would always say, Excelsior!
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.